Hare Krishna, a very warm welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam study classes. This is our 11th class in the series, and today we will discuss the verses of third chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam from verse number 35 till verse number 44. The title of this chapter is Krishna is the source of all incarnations. We already have had two classes on third chapter, which are available on YouTube. If people want to see them, they can refer to our channel Gita Online Study. We'll start with the Mangalasharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः. Once again, a very warm welcome to all the devotees. Now we will do the recap of the previous class, class number 10th. And in the previous class, we had discussed uh, uh, that after explaining the Purush avatars and also giving a list of 22 incarnations, Sud Goswami then provides information about the incarnations, the avatars, the various vibhutis, and imaginary material forms, which we call as Virat Roop. And we discussed in the previous class, starting from verse number 26, where after giving a list of 22 incarnations, Sud Goswami describes that the incarnations of Lord, the avatars of Lord, are innumerable. They are like rivulets, small streams of water flowing from an inexhaustible source of water. So this was merely to give us an idea that if somebody is misunderstanding that only 22 incarnations were there and there were no more incarnations, then this is to clarify that actually the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, and there is explained with the help of an analogy of rivulet and an inexhaustible source of water. Then uh, it was clarified that all the sages, Manus, Devatas, sons of Manus, are actually parts of plenary expansion, including Prajapatis. So we discussed two terms, plenary expansion and part of plenary expansion. One is Purna Ansha and then another one is Kala. So Purna Ansha is known as plenary expansion and parts of plenary expansion is known as Kala. So various sages, Manus, Devatas, sons of Manu are parts of plenary expansion, including Prajapatis, which are also known as the sons of Brahma. And examples of Manus, Devatas, sages, etc. were given. Then we further explained in the verse number 27 that the plenary expansion, which I just mentioned, were the Ansha avatars, have almost the same potency as the Lord. Like, for example, Lord Ramchandra, Lord Narsinghdev. These are called Purnansha, plenary expansions. They have the same potency as the Lord, but parts of plenary expansion, which is known as Kala, are not as powerful. So, less powerful among the Kala avatars also, there are two types. One is less powerful, which are known as Vibhutis, which are more powerful, are actually known as Avesh incarnations. So, an example of Avesh incarnation or Shakti avatars, uh, we discussed Narad Muni, who has been uh, Aveshit with the Bhakti Shakti of the Lord, the Chatush Kumar Aveshit with the Jnana Shakti of the Lord. And the example of Vibhutis, we discussed Marichi and Manu. Then we came to one of the most important verse of the previous class, or if we speak like that, then actually the Bhagavatam in itself. And this verse is known as the Paribhasha Sutra of Bhagavatam. This is the 28th verse of the third chapter, also known as the Emperor verse. So in this verse, it was mentioned that there are either in the list that have been given, the 22 avatars list that has been given in the preceding verses. In this list, either we have plenary portions, which is Purnansha, or portions of plenary portions of the Lord, which is known as Kalas. But among this list, uh, Lord Krishna is the original Bhagavan. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. When enemies of Indra torment the world, he appears to protect the various yugas. So, Ete Cham Sakala Pumsha, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Indrari Vyakulam Lokam, Mridayanti Yuge. A verse which is very, very similar to the verse that we see in Bhagavad Gita, which comes in the fourth chapter, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhagavati Bharata Abhyutthanam Dharmasya Tadatmanam Srijamya. And the important part of this verse is that a list is given, but among the list, Lord Krishna has been separately identified as Bhagavan Swayam, which means that Krishna does not have any source, while all other incarnations have a source, and that source is Lord Krishna himself. So for all other incarnations, there is a source, but for Krishna, Lord Krishna, there is no other source. Krishna is the source of his own self. So you can say that Lord Krishna actually is, in the real sense, the absolute truth, Swarat, fully independent. It is not dependent on anyone else. We then discussed a little bit about the Falashruti of hearing about the various avatars of the Lord. One who carefully recites about these mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion uh, gets relief from all miseries of life. So this is the Falashruti. And actually it is resembling to the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yogeti tatpata tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mameti. So Arjuna. So a very beautiful formula that if somebody wants to get relief from the miseries of life, which many people are actually looking after, they must uh, develop this habit or develop this good quality of carefully reading, reciting, discussing the avatars of the Lord, the Leela of the Lord. Then all these forms of the Lord are non-material. They are actually spiritual. The material form is composed of the gunas of the Mahat and the Mahat and the conception of universal form of the Lord, Virat Roop, is imaginary. So after this 29th verse, which was the Falashruti, there is a question somebody might raise. What about Virat Roop? You have given a list of 22 avatars, you have described Kala avatar, you have described Purna Ansha, Purna avatars, you have described Purush avatars, you described Vibhutis, Avesh avatar, etc. etc. But what about the Virat Roop form of the Lord? So it has been mentioned in this 30th verse that actually Virat Roop is non-material, it is not spiritual, like the all other avatars, including the Ansha avatar, including the uh, Kala avatar, etc. All are spiritual in nature. But the material, uh, the Virat Roop is actually material in nature. It is not spiritual. And at the same time, this material form of the Lord, which is Virat Roop, actually it is imaginary. Although it is imaginary, but it is imaginary in a bona fide way. So for those people who are neophytes, who don't know about the Lord, who cannot think beyond the conception of material world around them, they are first of all given this idea that actually this material world or this material nature is the body of the Lord, and various parts of the material nature like mountains, rivers, etc., etc., are mapped with the various limbs of the body of the Lord. So like that. So this is a imaginary form will be discussed more in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. After that, clarification is done by giving an analogy about the nature of Virat Roop. It is compared using as clouds are misunderstood as sky, or dust is misunderstood as air. Similarly, the scene or the universe is actually misunderstood as the Lord. By whom? By the unintelligent. People who have not developed that kind of a intelligence where they can see the transcendence. Uh, they see this material world or this material nature as the body of the Lord. And the analogy is given like cloud is misunderstood as sky, or dust is misunderstood as air. Similarly, the universe is misunderstood as Lord. Next, we discussed, uh, like in this Virat Roop, we are mentioning that the body of the material nature has been imaginarily or imaginarily has been referred to as the body of the Lord. Although this is imaginary explanation, but similarly, like we have the body of the Lord, gross body of the Lord. Similarly, in this conception, there is a imagination of the subtle body as well. Like we gross body made up of earth, water, air, fire, ether. We also have a subtle body which is mind, intelligence, and false ego. So similarly, the Virat Roop, which is the gross material body, also has a subtle. So this subtle form is also material in imagery. This was the concept discussed in the 32nd verse. So some yogis do worship Virat Roop as gross body, but some other yogis worship Virat Roop as subtle body. So like that, for those who worship as subtle body, it has been mentioned here that Virat Roop is also subtle, but that form is also material and imaginary. Next, in the 33rd verse, we discussed when the gross and material, subtle material forms are removed by self-realization, one can actually realize Brahman. So, in order to appreciate the Lord, we need to go beyond this material and the subtle form and actually understand that the Lord is purely spiritual. So, once this conception is removed, one can realize the spiritual aspect of the Lord. Ultimately, we discussed this 34th verse, the final verse in the previous class, where Sutta Goswami says, when this illusory energy subsides, Jiva is enriched with knowledge, and then he becomes self-realized and situated in his glory. That is, he becomes the eternal servant of Lord Krishna. So, those were the points that we discussed in the previous class. Now we start our discussion, fresh discussion of the class today, which is about, which will start from the verse 35 to all the way till 44. So we will finish this third chapter of the first canto completely in today's session. starting from the 35th verse. Okay. So the 35th verse is like this. Uh, Here we are now going to the section 35th to 39, where, like you see in the previous section, we had discussed about the imaginary material forms, which is about the Virat Roop. So here in the 35th verse, the discussion starts by giving now the real aspect of the form of the Lord, describing the Lord. In the previous section, the imaginary form was described, which is Virat Roop, which is material in nature, which is only imaginary. But now the real thing has been described. So describing the Lord. Uh, So how does it start? It starts with this verse. एवं जन्मानि कर्माणि य कर्तुरजनस्य च वर्णयन्ति स्म कवयो वेदगुह्यानि हृत्पते वर्णयन्ति स्म कवयो वेदगुह्यानि हृत्पते. Let us see what the meaning means line by line. Evam janmani karmani. So here the word evam is actually referring to the material forms of Virat Roop that we discussed in the previous section. So here it is saying that rejecting these two material forms, the birth and the activities of the Lord of our heart. Now you see, here when describing the Lord, a qualifier has been given, adjective has been given, Hrit Pate. Hrit means Hridaya, Hridaya means heart, Pate means the master. Hrit Pate, Lord of our heart. So a very devotional adjective has been used. So when the material form of the Lord, which was the Virat Roop, was being described, an adjective like this was not used. But when describing the real Lord, the real spiritual form of the Lord, this adjective has been used, implying that Virat Roop actually is not the form which is actually dear to the devotees. Like if you remember in Bhagavad Gita also, Arjuna, when he was shown the Vishwaroop of the Lord, Arjuna was not very comfortable looking at the Vishwaroop. He was actually trembling with fear. He was not having a very comfortable feeling, and actually he prayed. He prayed to the Lord that please show me your Saumya Vapu, the pleasing form of yourself. Similarly, here also, rejecting the two material forms, the birth and the activities of the Lord of our heart is described by the learned. So the learned describe the form, the activities of the Lord, the birth of the Lord, and here, after describing Lord of our heart to the Supreme Lord, there's another description given: who is inactive and who is unborn. So who is inactive and who is unborn? Here you will see that there is a little conflict here. The birth and activities are being described of the Lord by the learned, and it is being mentioned that this Lord, of whose activities the learned are going to describe, is inactive. This is conflicting. We are describing the activities but saying that he is inactive. And similarly, we are going to describe, or the learned people are going to describe, the birth of the Lord, but at the same time it is being mentioned who is unborn. So what does it mean? The birth and the activities of somebody who is unborn and who is inactive. This is kind of contrary to the description we are reading. So here we need to understand that the birth and activities of the Lord are actually different in nature, and we will see in the next slide. We will see the purport point by Srila Prabhupada, that how Lord's birth and activities are different from the birth and activities of the ordinary jiva, ordinary living entity. So before we go, let us see the last line also. Ved Guhyani Hritpatehe. So Hritpate I already described, Lord of our heart. and Ved Guhyani. So these uh, activities and the birth of the Lord are actually the most confidential truth of the Vedas. Most confidential truth of the Vedas. It is something so openly written in the books, but yet people cannot understand them very easily. That is why it is mentioned as the most confidential truth. Uh, when we are talking about the activities of the Lord, for example, Lord Krishna lifting Govardhan hill, many people don't realize that reading, speaking about these kind of activities, and meditating upon these kind of activities of the Lord actually are very, very potent activities. These activities are so potent that uh, they can actually relieve oneself from the cycle of birth and death. However, people are so ignorant and they don't appreciate these activities in a way that they can liberate themselves. They simply think that these are just another stories for entertainment, like we hear the stories of Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, etc. Similarly, these are stories something like that where it is being described for entertainment in our Puranas that a small boy actually lifted a full hill, protecting the villagers from the uh, torrents of rain that King Indra was showering from the heavens. So that is how it means that why these are most confidential truth of the Vedas. It is not actually very easy or very simple for someone to come to the level that these are the confidential truths. People take them to be granted as very ordinary stories. Similar thought has been mentioned in the Gita 4.9 verse, where Lord says, Janma karma cha me divyam, evam yo veti tattvataha. See, my janma and my karma are not ordinary. They are divya. They are transcendental. They are divine. And one who can understand them by tattva. What does it mean by tattva? Tattva means that they are not ordinary activities. These activities have the potency to develop the love for the Lord in our heart. And when the love for the Lord develops in our heart, actually we don't no longer need any birth. We no longer be remaining to live in this material existence. So this is the potency of those activities. Now let us read some of the important purport points from Srila Prabhupada's purport. So the one of the point is how Lord's birth and activities are different. The living beings who take birth and then again accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. But the so called appearance and disappearance of the Lord are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. So here you can see a difference between the birth and activities of an ordinary living entity has been compared with the birth and activities of the Supreme Lord. So, for living beings, what is mentioned? For living beings, it is mentioned that they have to accept birth and death, which is actually bound by the laws of material nature. So, when the living entities come to this material world, the living entity perform various activities. And while performing those activities, the living entity get bound by various karmas, good or bad. And uh, in order to receive the fruit of those karmas, the material nature, on the order of the Supreme Lord, gives the next body to the living entity. So the living entity is actually subject to the laws of material nature. However, the so-called appearance and disappearance of the Lord are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. When the Lord comes to this material world as avatar, then the Lord does not come to this material world because the Lord actually had some karma in the past. The Lord is transcendental. He comes to the world by his own sweet will. Prabhupada used to have a very interesting analogy to explain this fact. He would say that when a prime minister of a country visits a jail, let us assume Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting Tihar jail, and he enters into one of the barracks where he engages into some discussion with the prisoners there. So somebody, a prisoner who might be passing by from in front of that cell, in front of that confined jail, he might think that the prime minister or this person actually is also a prisoner in this jail. But no, the situation of the prisoners of the jail are different from the situation of the prime minister of the country. The prime minister of the country actually have come out of his own sweet will, but while the prisoners in the jail actually are bound by the laws of the state. They have committed some crime, they have committed some offense, and that is why they are in the jail. But the prime minister is not subject to those laws of the jail. He's going there only to meet the prisoners, take stock of the situation, how the jail administration is working, to encourage them to do whatever. But that is why the birth and activities of Lord are different. So that is the reason it is being mentioned that the Lord actually is unborn. Unborn means that he is not subject to the laws of material nature. And similarly, Lord is pure. Lord does not is not bound with any gunas, neither sattva guna, rajo guna, and tama guna. He does not incur any karma because he's pure. He's shuddha sattva. He's pure. So whatever actions he does not uh, does not call for any karmic reaction. So when there are no karmic reaction, it is mentioned that the Lord actually does not do any activities. Akartur, ajanma, and akartur. So that is how we can understand the meaning of the word that the Lord actually takes birth, but it is unborn, whereas the Lord actually does some activities, whereas at the same time he's akartur. He does not do any activities because it does not get any karmic reaction. So this point we discussed just now, potency of meditating on the Lord activities. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita by the Lord that He is so called birth and material world and His activities are all transcendental. And simply by meditation on such activities, one can attain realization of Brahman and thus become liberated from material bondage. So these are not ordinary activities about Lord's Leelas and Lord's birth. They have the potency to liberate the living entity from this material existence. So they are extraordinary, and one must develop love, affection, interest in listening to these activities. And Bhagavatam is full of those narrations. Now, going to the next verse. So, you would see that in the next verse, in the previous verse, there was a kind of a introduction given that the learned have described the in the 36th verse, you would find that a list follows. Qualities of the Lord actually follows. And what are these qualities? We will read the word. And also, you would notice that this particular verse actually is a bit longer than the previous verse. So, you would identify if you count the Devanagari script, the number of syllables in the each line in the each quarter of the verse are 11 in number, whereas in the previous 35th verse they were 8 in number, because we are also developing some interest, some knowledge about how to recite the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this particular verse actually is known as Upajati Chanda. The previous verse that we just discussed known as Anushtup. So Anushtup is very popular. Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana is largely written in Anushtup, so you would frequently listen to Anushtup. But this verse Upajati is also found in Bhagavad Gita, also although in less numbers. So the melody of this verse goes a little different than the previous one, and I would recite that melody. सवा इदं विश्वं ममोघलीलः सृज्यत्यवत्यत्ति न सज्जतेऽस्मिन् भूतेषु चान्तर्हित आत्मतन्त्रः षाड्वर्गिकं जिघ्रति षड्गुणेशः षाड्वर्गिकं जिघ्रति षड्गुणेशः. Let us see each line. What does it mean? Sava idam vishwam amogha leelaha. So amogh leela. Amogh leela actually means leela means actions. Amogh means spotless, nishkalank, which does not have any blemish. So we are going to discuss Sava idam vishwam. Sava idam vishwam amogh leelaha. One who creates this vishwam, uh, one who creates this vishwam, one who creates this material world, uh, whose actions are actually amogh leelaha, whose activities are amogh, whose activities are spotless. So this person who's being referred here as amogh leela, what does he do? Srajyati, srajyate, srajyati, avati, and atti. Srajati, avati, and atti. Srajati means to create, avati means to maintain, and atti means to destroy. He creates, he maintains, and he destroys the idam vishwam, the material, the world that we are living in. And how does he do it? He does it in a very detached manner. Sajjate asmin. Sajjate asmin means he does not get affected. Does not get affected while creating, while maintaining, while uh, destroying. What does it mean? He's not attached. So let me explain this point. What does it mean by he doesn't get affected? If we own a car and the car uh, uh, undergoes any accident, faces or there is an accident of the car, and the body of the car is damaged, and when the car is brought in front of us, or even the news that comes to us, we feel very hurt, as if somebody has he creates, he maintains, and destroys. He doesn't remain, he doesn't get affected by this. He's kind of above all this. Then, uh, so we discussed this quality, Amog Leela. Then we discussed he creates, maintains, and destroys without being affected. Then, what else? He is Bhuteshu Cha Antarhita. Bhuteshu Cha Antarhita means he is within every living being. And he is Atmatantra. Atmatantra, he is independent. Atmatantra also actually very similar to Swatantra. We have Swatantrata Divas. Swatantrata Divas means we have Independence Day. So similar to that word, we have Atmatantra. Atmatantra means he is independent. Then more qualities of the Lord. Shad Vargikam. Shad Vargikam means he is the master of six opulences. So master of six opulences means what? So when somebody has opulences, the person actually becomes very attractive. And our Lord's name is Krishna. Krishna means one who's all attractive, who attracts everyone. So when who is all attractive, then that person should have all opulences in full. There should not be any scarcity of opulences in this person. And what are these six opulences? These six opulences are: he's all rich, he's all powerful, he's all famous, he's all beautiful, all knowledgeable, and all renounced. So those are the six opulences possessed by the Supreme Lord. Then he is Shad Guneshah. Shad Guneshah means he is the master of the six senses. Master of the six senses means uh, we have six senses like sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of seeing, sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of uh, sense of I think I have done the five: sense of hearing, sense of seeing, sense of smelling, sense of taste, and sense of touch. So we have five senses, and above all these five senses, we have mind, mana. So we have these six senses. So he is the master of six senses. And then another word is mentioned here is Jigrati. Jigrati means although the Lord maintains, creates, and annihilates this material world, but he remains aloof. He remains he doesn't come in contact. And Jigrati means he is actually in connection, is actually connected with the world like fragrance is connected with the object of fragrance. So, for example, we may have a bottle of perfume kept some distance away from us. If we just open the bottle of perfume, the fragrance of that perfume will reach our nostrils and we will experience that fragrance. So, in order to experience the fragrance, we need not come in contact, physically in contact with the perfume bottle. We can remain physically aloof with the bottle and still be connected with the bottle through the fragrance that is emanating from the bottle. Similarly, the Lord, although He creates, He maintains, He destroys the material universe, but He is like disconnected with the material universe. He doesn't get entangled with the material universe, but yet he is connected with the material universe like the fragrance is connected with the object of fragrance. That is the meaning of the word Jigrati. So the 36th verse describes various qualities of the Lord which were given as an introduction in the previous verse, in the 35th verse. Let us see uh, the purport point, and we discussed this point just now, but let us read it how Prabhupada has mentioned it in Bhagavatam. Analogy to describe relationship of the Lord with the material creation. He is connected with this material creation very superficially, as one smells odor without being connected with the odorous article. Non-godly elements, therefore, can never approach him despite all endeavors. So we can understand that since the Lord is kind of aloof, disconnected with the material world, then this material world is filled with all kind of non-godly things. So the Lord actually, when he's disconnected, he doesn't come in contact with those non-godly elements, and these elements can actually never approach the Supreme Lord, despite all endeavors. Okay, now moving to the 37th verse, and this verse is also in the Upjati Chand, and we will recite this verse also in the same way like we recited the verse in the 36th, the 36th verse. So here the theme is unintelligent cannot understand the Lord. I gave you a little hint in the when I was explaining the 35th verse that people who are unintelligent, who actually uh, does not have much interest in the subject matter of divinity, they cannot understand the Lord. Just they cannot understand. They are unintelligent, and in order to understand the Lord, one need to have some qualification, have some quality. So let us recite this verse. न चास्य कश्चिन्निपुणेन धातु रवैति जन्तु कुमनीश ऊतिः नामानि रूपाणि मनोवचोभिः सन्तन्वतो नच्चर्यामि वाग्यः सन्तन्वतो नटचर्याम् इवाग्यः न चास्य कश्चिन निपुणेन धातुर. So nipunena means skillful, and unintelligent cannot with their skill. Na cha asya, this Lord, Kaschin, this Lord, Kaschin means nobody. Nobody can understand with their own skill the Lord. Kumanisha means unintelligent people. Jantuhu means the Jantuhu actually is referring here to the living being. Kumanisha, unintelligent living being cannot understand the Lord by their intelligence. And Utihi means know, either know the Lord or his activities. Utihi means Lord's activities. So the purport or the translation of first two lines is Unintelligent cannot with their skill know the Lord or his activities. So with our skill here referring to our qualification, our educational qualification, our IQ, our whatever you can refer here, our maybe accomplishments in the world, MA, PhD, or maybe gold medalist in Olympic or world champion, or the prime minister or chief minister, whatever. With our skill, we cannot know the Lord or his activities. Uti. And along with activities, we can also not know Namani Rupani. We cannot know about the name and the form of the Lord through by using our mind, our mental speculation, our imagination, running our imagination far and wide. Lord might be like this, Lord might be like this. With our mind and our words, describing with our skillful words, choicest of words, technical words, complicated words. We cannot describe the Lord or we cannot explain the Lord with our skill, with our mental imagination, with our skillful jugglery of words. Neither we can describe his activities, his name, his form. We cannot through these material qualifications. And an analogy has been given at the end. Like a foolish person cannot understand the activities of a drama actor. So when somebody does not know a particular art form and he goes to a theater to observe any presentation by an artist, for example, you go to a theater to observe, to watch a Bharatnatyam dance, and you don't have any idea of what a Bharatnatyam dance means. And the actor is doing very skillfully all the gestures, raising the eyebrows, uh, dancing with the eyes, making different expressions on the face. And the actor might have done all these activities on the stage with a lot of skill, with a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of practice. The actor might have used to create that kind of a performance. But the person who does not know any ABCD of Bharatnatyam would think, would know nothing about what the artist is doing. So the artist might be doing various delicate or uh, subtle movements of the dances, but the foolish person cannot appreciate. For him, the dance is simply uh, some form of exercise or whatever, and he cannot really appreciate it. Similarly, people who are unintelligent, they also cannot actually understand the activities of the Lord. They cannot understand the name of the Lord. They cannot understand about the form of the Lord. And if you read the purport that has been given by Srila Prabhupada, in the category of unintelligent people, Srila Prabhupada actually have given two type of people. One kind of people is the karmis. Karmis means those people who rely a lot on their own skill, on their own capability. Uh, uh, for example, they would say that if we have to become successful, what we need to do is do our own endeavor, do our own hard work. And then, with our own intelligence, our hard work is all that matters. So, this category of people are known as karmis. They simply are too much uh, uh, too much attached to the endeavor they have or they want to perform, or too much to the skill actually they have. uh, that is all they want. They say that the benchmark of success in this world is that how hard you work and how skillfully you apply yourself to gain success in this world. So they are only after fruitive activities, they are only after material benefits. So these are foolish people because they don't have any idea about the Lord, any idea about divinity or transcendence. They have no idea at all. Apart from these karmis or fruitive workers, we have a second category of people mentioned in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. And these category of people actually are little better than the karmis. Why? Because these people do believe in transcendence. These people do believe that beyond this material creation, there is actually uh, transcendental powers, divine powers, or divine controller who is actually looking after the affairs of this world. However, why are they unintelligent? They are unintelligent because they describe this transcendent power or this divinity or the supreme controller in the wrong way. They think that this supreme controller does not have any form, does not have any name, and does not have any activities. It is simply a formless, nameless, and activityless being which pervades everywhere. He and That's how they define the Supreme Lord. But the devotees who are intelligent people who understand the transcendence in the right way, they know that the Lord actually is a spiritual being. There's a difference between the body of the Lord and the spirit of the Lord. There is no difference between the body of the Lord and the spirit and the soul of the Lord. Like we have our body and we have a soul. We are a soul and we have a body. But that kind of an argument does not apply to the Lord. The Lord's soul and the Lord's body are the same. And these kind of unintelligent people who are like Gyanis, who actually believe in transcendence, but they give this transcendence an adjective that it is nameless, it is formless, it is activityless. They think that this Lord is having no attributes at all, because they think that for having any attribute, for having any name, any activity, any form, one must have some attribute, some physical form. But they forget that our Lord does not have any physical form, but it does not mean that it has no form. It has a form, but that form is spiritual. It is not material in nature. So that is why Srila Prabhupada has classified or given a reference to two class of unintelligent people. One is the karmis and the another one is the empirical philosophers, which are in other words known as jnanis, and they're compared with the foolish person who cannot understand the activities of a drama actor. Going to the next one, the 38th one. Again, the chanda is upjati chand. In this way, the discussion now moves forward, where in the previous verse it is mentioned that the unintelligent cannot understand. But then who can understand and how one can understand the Supreme Lord? So the short answer is given in this verse. How can the Lord be understood? And the answer is Lord can be understood by bhakti. Lord can be understood by bhakti. And you will appreciate how that has been mentioned. Let me read the verse. सवेदधातुः पदवीं परस्य दुरन्तवीर्यस्य रथाङ्गपाणेः यो अमायया सन्ततयानुवृत्त्या भजेत तत्पादसरोजगन्धम् भजेत तत्पादसरोजगन्धम्. So let us see the meaning line by line. सवेद धातु padavim parasya. Padavim means the glory, the position, the glory of the Lord. Parasya means, par means beyond, beyond this world. Para. Para means divinity. This world is material, and beyond this material world, where we have spiritual world, it is divine, it is transcendental. So, Saveda, only those can know. Saveda, only those can know. Dhatu. Dhatu means the creator. Only those can know the real glory of the creator, real divinity of the creator, and Duranta Viryasya, and the real power of the Lord. The Duranta Viryasya means he is very, very powerful. Duranta, one does not, which does not have any anta of power. Duranta Viryasya. And here you will see the Lord has been referred to as Rathanga Panehe. Rathanga Panehe is a very devotional way of explaining the Lord, because there is a small pastime, there is a small leela of the Lord attached with this word Rathanga Panehe. And you can see the hint of that leela is given in the picture in the slide. So Ratha means chariot, Anga means the limb of the chariot, and Pani means hand. So Ratanga Panehe, Ratanga Panehe means uh, Lord Krishna, whose hand hold the chariot wheel. So the story of Lord Krishna holding the chariot wheel is related with the Kurukshetra war, of the Mahabharat war, where one fine day Bhishma Dev makes a very staunch vow. He says he makes a vow that today in the battlefield I am going to kill Arjuna, and actually I will make Lord Krishna break his vow, because Lord Krishna will not allow Arjuna to be killed, so he will have to lift some weapon. And before the beginning of the Mahabharat war, Lord Krishna also had taken this vow that he will not lift any weapon during the war. So, uh, and in that on that particular day, Lord Bhishma Dev actually fought so ferociously and showered Arjuna with his arrows, so much that Arjuna was actually about to die. Arjuna was about to die with the arrows of Bhishma Dev, and then Lord Krishna, when he observed it, he understood that today, if I don't intervene, then certainly Bhishma is going to kill Arjuna. So, in order to protect his dear devotee Arjuna, Lord Krishna took a broken wheel which was lying nearby, in his hand and charged on Bhishma Dev with great anger, with great roar. Bhishma Dev, like this. So, uh, Bhishma Dev, when he saw the Supreme Lord charging with the wheel in his hand towards him, uh, stood like with the folded hand. So the Lord understood that Bhishma Dev's objective is now fulfilled. So, with this pastime, actually, we understand that the Lord is a very Bhakta Vatsal. He is a very dear Lord of the devotees. He is very caring and a very protective Lord as far as devotees are concerned. So, how he is protective? So, through this Leela, we see that he protected Arjuna, and not only he protected Arjuna, but he also protected the vow of his dear devotee Bhishma. He broke his own vow, but he did not let the vow of his devotee Bhishma got broken. So like that, he is Bhaktavatsal. He is uh, a very sweet, loving, and caring Lord. So that is why you see how the Lord can be understood. A very devotional, a very bhaktipurna adjective Rathanga Pane has been mentioned here. So then, how do we understand the Lord? How do we understand the Lord? So we understand the Lord by Yo Amayaya, Santatata, and then Anuvritya. So there are three items given: Amayaya, Santataya, and Anuvritya. So these are actually very resembling to the shloka that we read in the second chapter, sixth verse. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshage ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. So here amayaya has been mentioned. So what does amayaya means? Amayaya means without reservation. Without reservation. Without reservation is resembling to which word in the Savai Pumsa verse? So without reservation, amayaya resembles to ahetuki. Ahetuki means without any cause, without any motive, without any motive. So who is without any reservation, without any cause? And then santataya. Santataya means apratihata. Apratihata means continuously, regularly. It is not that we do bhakti as a part-time activity. We should do it as a full-time activity. And then anuvritya. So anuvritya means with favorable attitude. So this particular word anuvritya is resembling with the verse that we had studied in Bhaktir Samrat Sindhu. And what was that verse? Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadya anavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. The, you would see that the word anu is also there in this verse, and vritya is also there. So anu means according to scriptures, according to the guidance of the spiritual master, And Vritya actually means favorable. In favorable, it should not be unfavorable to the Lord. So then, if we do it like this, one who wants to know the glory, the divinity, and the power of the Lord, who can know, who are without reservation, who are without interruption and favorable attitude, doing what? Bhajet tad pad saroj gandham. Gandham means fragrance, saroj means lotus, pad means feet, and tat is being referred here to the Lord Krishna. Bhajet is mean worshipping or serving. Serving the fragrance of his lotus feet, serving the fragrance of his lotus feet. So Lord's body is very fragrant. Various kind of beautiful fragrances are emanating from the body of the Lord. So serving the fragrance of his lotus feet. So one who without reservation, amaya, satatam, without interruption, and santata, without interruption, and anuvritya, with favorable attitude, serves the fragrance of his lotus feet. Only those can know the glory, divinity, and power of the Lord. Of which kind of Lord? The holder of the chariot wheel, who is a Bhaktavatsal Lord. So here in the purport, Prabhupada gives a secret of entering into the kingdom of Lord. The Lord Himself guides the pure devotees toward the path of realization due to their constant engagement in the loving service of the Lord in spontaneous affection. So, spontaneous affection is amayaya, without any motive, only out of affection and love. And then santata, santata, uh, santataya, which means constant engagement, right? Uninterrupted. That is the secret of entering into the kingdom of God. Fruitive activities, karmis, and speculation, manovachor bhi, in the 37th verse. The empirical philosophers, the jnanis, are no qualifications for entering into the kingdom of God. So that is the Prabhupada's explanation in this purport. Okay, now we'll move to the next verse, which is the 39th verse. So in the 39th verse, before we move to that, here we should understand what is going on. So just now in the 30th verse, Sut Goswami has glorified bhakti. Who can understand the Lord? Only the devotees can understand the Lord. Who actually serve the Saroj Tatpad Gandha, Tatpad Saroj Gandha. Who can serve the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord? They can understand. But so what is going on is Sud Goswami made this statement: only bhakti, with bhakti you can understand the Lord. But in the assembly, there are various types of transcendentalists that are present. There are transcendentalists which are Gyan yogis. There are transcendentalists which are Dhyan yogis. And Dhyan yogis also of various different categories. And then maybe there are different type of transcendentalists there. But if these transcendentalists are hearing that only by bhakti you can understand the Lord, they might think, oh, we are without bhakti. We don't have bhakti. So they might feel a bit lamented. They might feel a bit despondent by thinking that, oh, we are without bhakti. So Sud Goswami actually lifts their morale, encourages them in the 39th verse by appreciating their queries. So he appreciates the queries of the sages in the next verse. So although this appreciation thing is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, but we can find this kind of narratives being mentioned in the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The Sararth Darshini commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains this, that in order to appreciate the sages who might think that we are actually not without bhakti. Uh, Sud Goswami speaks this 39th verse. Wonderful inquiries. Oh dear sages, your inquiries are wonderful. So he says, अथेह धन्या भगवन्त इत्थं यद्वासुदेवे अखिललोकनाथे कुर्वन्ति सर्वात्मकम् आत्मभावं न यत्र भूया परिवर्त उग्रः न यत्र भूयः परिवर्त उग्रः. So in the 39th verse, Sud Goswami is saying, Atheha Dhanya Bhagavanta Itham. Only queries like this can make successful Dhanya. Huh? And Bhagavanta. What Bhagavanta means? Fully knowledgeable. Itham means in this world. Only queries like this can make one successful and fully knowledgeable in this world. So when one gets knowledge, uh, the knowledge help the person and individual to attain success in this world. But what is the ultimate success and what is the ultimate knowledge? So ultimate knowledge is to know that the activities, the name, and the birth of the Supreme Lord is actually transcendental. It is divine. That is the ultimate knowledge. And if we have this ultimate knowledge, we get the ultimate success. Ultimate success is Neti Mameti. So Arjuna, one who takes then, one who leaves the body, Tektam Deha Punarjanma, Neti Mameti Swarjuna. So he doesn't take any birth again. So that is the ultimate success. So why these queries are successful and full of knowledge? Because such queries are about Vasudev. Yad Vasudeve Akhila Lokanath. That Vasudev who is Akhila Loknath, who is the master of all the universes. Kurvanti Sarvatmakam Atma Bhavam. With this knowledge, what happens is full ecstatic love for him arise in the heart of the devotee. When they read the beautiful pastimes of the Lord, the love for the Lord arise within the heart of the devotee. Kurvante sarvatmakam atma bhavam. Atma bhavam is a very devotionally charged word here. Atma bhavam, ecstatic love, bhav. You have read about bhava, prema in the Bhakti Samrat Sindhu classes. So, kurvanti sarvatmakam. Sarvatmakam means full atma bhavam. And when this kind of emotion arise, then na yatra bhuyaha parivarta ugraha. Na yatra bhuyaha parivarta ugraha. Parivarta means repetition, repetition of birth and death, and ugraha means dreadful. So who wants to come back again and again in this dreadful cycle of birth and death? Bhuyaha, bhuya means again. Then if somebody understand Vasudev as Akhil Loknath and understand that his activities are actually divine, his activities are transcendental, and develops Atma Bhavam, develops love for him, then the result is there is no dreadful repetition of cycle of birth and death for this individual. That is the message. Let us read the purport. The personality of Godhead is the last word in absolute truth. Here again the description of Bhagavan, Paramatma and Brahman will be there. So let us read. Impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, which is Super Soul, are included in the knowledge of personality of Godhead. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions. So why Prabhupada is saying is this: full knowledgeable in this world. By what? How? Because by doing queries about Vasudev, queries about Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna is the Bhagavan manifestation of the absolute truth. So one who knows the Bhagavan manifestation completely, nicely, then there is no separate endeavor required to know the Brahman aspect, the Paramatma aspect, because in the Bhagavan aspect, everything will be understood very well. Everything will be completely and perfectly clarified to us. That is the purport. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions. There is no separate need for learning about Purush avatars. There is no separate need for learning about vibhutis and so on and so forth. Once you understand once you understand the Bhagwan aspect, you know everything. Now this section is finished, the section of 35 to 39, where Sud Goswami is describing about the how to understand the Lord. So in the previous section to this section, the description was that about the Purush avatar, that this is actually material. And if you want to know the Lord, this is how you need to understand the Lord and how you can understand the Lord by bhakti. Now we are moving to the next section, which is from verse number 40 till 44. Here, Sud Goswami is going to answer question number 6. So Sud Goswami now concludes the discussion on Purush avatar and Leela avatar after he has presented additional insights. So additional insights is important here. What is additional insight? Like for question number 1 and 2, huh, what was the answer? The answer was bhakti. Question number 1 was what is the ultimate good for people? Question number 2 is what is the essence of the scriptures? Answer to both the question was bhakti. But and he gave this answer, Sud Goswami gave this answer in verse number 6 of chapter number 2. But he did not stop there. After giving this pointed answer in verse number 6, Sud Goswami continues to develop on that response by also telling about what is the process of bhakti, how the process of bhakti ultimately leads the practitioner to the level of prema. Not only that, he also clarifies what actually is not bhakti. He says varnashram, practice of varnashram is not bhakti. Like that, he gives additional insights when answering question number 1 and 2. Similarly, when answering question number 3, 4, and 5, which is about why did the Lord appear as son of Devaki and Vasudev? What are the Purush avatars of the Lord? Explain us about the Leela avatar of the Lord. Sud Goswami answers these questions. He gives answer about Leela avatar, he gives answer about Purush avatar, he gives answer about the reason of the Lord descending in this world. He gives all those answers. But then he also elaborates, he also presents additional insights. What are those insights? Those insights are that Virat Roop is not a avatar of the Lord. He also tells about Vibhutis. He also tells about Anshas. He also tells about Kalas. So multiple insights he presents when he's answering the question. So he's kind of giving a little more detailed answer or a answer with additional insights. He's simply not answering only in one word or one sentence. He's presenting some additional insights while answering question number 1 till question number 5. Now he has concluded that discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's concluding that discussion. And now he's moving to the question number 6. Question number 6 is where did religious principles took shelter after Lord Krishna departed from this world? And the answer to this question is Srimad Bhagavatam, the book, the very book we all are trying to study deeply in this study course. So, where did religious principles took shelter? And the answer is Srimad Bhagavatam. So, verses starting from 40 till 44, Sut Goswami will now glorify Srimad Bhagavatam. So, he will say this verse. So, this verse goes like this. Idam Bhagavatam Nam Puranam. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam. Okay, this will be a different melody because this is again a Anushtupshan. So it will be recited like this. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakar Bhagavan Rishi Nishreya Saya Lokasya Dhanyam Swatya Yanam Mahat Dhanyam Swastya Yanam Mahat Dhanyam Swastya Yanam Mahat. So let us see each line. What does it mean? Idam Bhagavatam Nama. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam. So the book where now religion has taken shelter is known as Bhagavat Puran. The name of the book is Bhagavat Puran, and it is not an ordinary book. It is Brahma Samhitam. It is Brahma Samhitam. It is actually the literary incarnation of God. It is literary incarnation of God. And what is the Subject matter of this book, Uttam Shloka Charitam. It describes the activities and qualities of Uttam Shlok. Uttam Shlok means Lord Krishna. Shloka means verses, and Uttama means choicest of verses, the best of the verses. So the choicest of poetry is used to describe the qualities and activities of the Lord. So that is Uttama Shloka Charita. Then a Chakar Bhagavan Rishi. Chakar Bhagavan Rishi means Chakar means compiler. Bhagavan Rishi. Bhagavan Rishi means uh, it is being referred here to Vyasadev. Vyasadev, who is the literary incarnation of God. These activities have been compiled in the book form by Bhagavan Rishi, means incarnation of the Supreme Lord, Shaktyavesh incarnation actually, and that is Vyed Vyas. And what is the objective of this book? This objective of this book is for the ultimate good of people. Nishreyasaya, Nishreya Saya, Lokasya. Lokasya means the people of the world. The ultimate good for the people of the world. And it is Dhanyam, it is all successful, it is Swastya Yanam, it is all blissful, and it is Mahat. It is Mahat means it is all perfect. So if you follow the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, you are bound to get the ultimate success. If you follow the teachings of Bhagavatam, you are bound to become all blissful. And then the content of this book is all perfect. You will achieve all perfection in your life. That is how Srimad Bhagavatam has been described. So you can see literary incarnation of God. So here you can see in this picture the 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam are there, 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. So these first two cantos are actually like lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, uh, the ninth, the seventh and the eighth cantos are the arms of the Lord. The ninth, the eighth and ninth canto are the arms of the Lord. The 10th canto is like the face of the Lord, and then the 11th canto is like the forehead of the Lord, and the 12th canto is like the head of the Lord. So we discussed this analogy in the beginning of our study classes, like probably in the second class we might have discussed this. So you can see uh, Srimad Bhagavatam is no different than Lord Krishna himself. It is the literary incarnation of Lord. So Prabhupada is elaborating on the same point in the purport to the 40th verse. Worship Srimad Bhagavatam, same as Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavatam, there are selected of great deities who are in direct contact with the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God and is therefore not different from him. Srimad Bhagavatam should be worshipped, respect, and worship. So worshipping Srimad Bhagavatam means what? Worshipping Srimad Bhagavatam actually means, I mean, it can have a literal meaning also, it can have a little more deeper figurative meaning also. So literal meaning is that you can actually hold the of Srimad Bhagavatam. You can keep all the sets of Bhagavatam, all the books of Bhagavatam on the altar and do a performance of Deepak, Agarbatti, flower, etc. That is also good, but you should not remain, you should not keep your worship of Srimad Bhagavatam only to that point. Yeah. You should extend the worship of Srimad Bhagavatam further. How? By reading it, by studying it, by reciting it, by explaining it to others. Like this, you can have various ways of how we can worship Srimad Bhagavatam. So the real worship is read it, study it, preach it, and apply in one's own life. So that is the real worship of Bhagavatam. And what is the content of Bhagavatam? Selected histories of great devotees who are in direct contact with the personality of God. So selected histories. So it all explains about the those people in the past who became great devotees of the Lord. So various different ways you will read and relish. So and then Bhagavatam is Sri Krishna himself. One can derive from the study of Bhagavatam all benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. So if the Lord comes in person, face to face, in front of you. That probably will be the dream come true of any devotee of that. Okay, I got the darshan of the Lord. But here Prabhupada is making a very strong statement. He's saying the benefit one will derive by the personal presence of the Lord. Now you can imagine that when Dhruv Maharaj saw the Lord, so the Dhruv Maharaj was very ecstatic, joyful. He actually had various beautiful realizations when he saw the Lord in front of him. Similarly, Prabhupada is saying those same experience one can derive by the study of Bhagavatam. All those benefits are possible that are possible by the personal presence of the Lord. Why? Because Bhagavatam carries with it all the transcendental blessings of Lord Sri Krishna that we can expect from his personal contact. So Lord Krishna took his conch and put on the forehead of Dhruva. And by that, Dhruva started narrating beautiful, beautiful verses in the glorification of the Lord. Similarly, if we read Bhagavatam with the right attitude, then we can also get the same transcendental blessing, same benefit as we can expect from his personal touch, from his personal contact. Now you will see a very delicious verse, the cream of all scriptures. So here, Sud Goswami is explaining the glories of Bhagavatam, saying that Bhagavatam is the cream of all scriptures. It is the saram, it is the essence of all scriptures. He's saying, Tad idam grahyam asa, tad idam grahyam asa, sutamatma vatamvaram, sutamatma vatamvaram, सर्ववेदेतिहासानां सर्ववेदेतिहासानां सारं सारं samudhratam saram saram samudhratam. So you see a very beautiful use of alankar is there. Saram saram samudhratam. So this is anupras alankar, alliteration we call it in English. Tad idam grahyam asa sutam atmavatam varam सर्ववेदेति आसा सर्ववेदे इतिहासानां सारम सारम समुद्रतम. Tad idam grahyam asa. So Vyasdev gave this scripture to, grahyam means giving, this idam means this scripture, tad to whom what? Sutam, sutam, sutam. Sutam actually is referring here to the son. So Vyasdev gave this to his son, and who is son of Vyasdev? Srila Shukdev Goswami. And the quality of Shukdev Goswami is Atmavatam Varam. Atmavatam Varam. Atmavatam means he is self-realized. He is actually not an ordinary living being. He is a self-realized living being. Varam, not only self-realized, one of the best of the self-realized person. Varam. Varam means the topmost. Sarva Vede Itihasanam. What does it have? Sarva Ved and Itihasanam. It has all the Vedas and Itihasas. But what about Vedas and Itihasas? What exactly about the Vedas and Itihasas? It's the Saram Saram Samudratam. Saram Saram. The very essence of the Vedas and the Itihasas. Saram Saram Samudratam. Samudratam means churned out. Churned out. Churned out means like we have this churning rod, and when we rotate this churning rod in the milk, then what comes out? What samudratam, udhrat means to bring out. What thus comes out is the butter, is the cream. So Srimad Bhagavatam is also like the cream of the ocean of Vedic literature. The ocean of Vedic literature. Srimad Bhagavatam is something like a butter that floats on the top of the ocean of Vedic literature. So some very important points mentioned by Prabhupada in the purport. Puranas, Mahabharata, etc. are actual histories. Men with a poor fund of knowledge only accept the history of the world from the time of Buddha or since 600 BC. And prior to this period, all histories mentioned in the scriptures are calculated by them to be only imaginary stories. So this is the unfortunate situation that people only date the history back only to the period of Lord Buddha, 600 BC. Before that, oh, everything is imagination, everything is a story. But that is not a fact. All the stories mentioned in the Puranas and Mahabharata, etc., are actual histories, not only of this planet, but also of millions of other planets within the universe. So not only this planet. So whatever stories are you reading here, they not necessarily belong to the planet Earth. They could also be from the other planets, because as per Vedic understanding, there is life on other planets also. And there are also various leelas, various pastimes of the Lord going on. There are devotees of the Lord on other parts of the universes also. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the actual history, and it contains stories not only from this planet but also from the other planets, other lokas also. This is what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Bhagavatam is the cream. Vedic literature is like the milk ocean of knowledge. Cream or butter is the most palatable, most delicious part of essence of the milk. And so also is Srimad Bhagavatam, for it contains what? All palatable, instructive, and authentic versions of different activities of the Lord and his devotees. So palatable. Palatable means very swadisht, very relishable, full of juice, full of nectar. Instructive. Instructive means they're inspiring. They inspire us to take to devotional service of the Lord. They inspire love of the Lord in our heart. Authentic. Authentic means they are actually the real uh, stories of these devotees, versions of different activities of the Lord and his devotees. So Bhagavatam actually is the cream. So this is what Sutta Goswami mentions in this 41st verse. Moving to the 42nd verse, here Sutta Goswami mentions that how Srimad Bhagavatam was then passed from Vyasadev to Shukdev, that we discussed in 41st verse. Now from Shukdev Goswami, it went to Parikshit Maharaj, and a brief high level description of where it was given, how it was given, in what circumstances it was given. Satu samshravayamasa Maharajam Parikshitam Prayopavishtam Gangayam Paritam Paramarshibhihi Paritam Paramarshibhihi Satu Samshravayamasa Satu Samshraya Vayamasa Maharajam Parikshitam. What does it mean? Shukdev Goswami spoke this literature to Parikshit Maharaj. Shram Sam Shravaya Masa. Shravaya Masa means Sunaya. Made him heard, spoke to Parikshit Maharaj. And where was Parikshit Maharaj based at that location, at that point? Prayopavishtam Gangayam. He was situated near the banks of Ganga. What was he doing? Prayopavishtam. He was actually observing fasting until death. Observing fasting until death. That's what he was doing. And then the surrounding around Parikshit Maharaj was Paritam. He was surrounded by Paramarshibhi. Param means great, and Rishibhi means the sages. So you see the picture here. The picture describes this verse exactly. Here Parikshit Maharaj is sitting hearing to Shukdev Goswami, and this all is happening near the bank of the Ganges, and surrounding Shukdev and Parikshit are great sages who are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam also together with Parikshit Maharaj. So going to the next verse. Here in the next verse, Suta Goswami answers the question number 6 of the sages of Naimisharanya, which they had asked in the first chapter of the 23rd verse of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam. So here The verse goes like this: Krishne swadhamopagate dharma jnanadibhi saha kalau nashta drashamesha पुराणार्को अधुनोदिताः कलौ नष्ट दृशामेश पुराणार्को अधुनोदिताः Krishne swadham upagate. After Krishna departed for his own abode, swadham. Swadham means his own abode. Upagate means departed. Krishna is about Lord Krishna. Dharma Gyan Adibihi Saha. Saha means together with Dharma, together with Jnana, accompanied by religion and knowledge, etc. Adi means etc. So he took away. Uh, he is the actually the embodiment of Jnana, embodiment of Dharma. So when Lord Krishna departed, so Suta Goswami is saying is the Dharma and Jnana also departed with him. And what was this period? This was shortly before the Kali Yuga period. In Kali Yuga, when people have lost their knowledge due to darkness of ignorance, at such time sun like Bhagavatam has arose. So after Lord Krishna departed together with religion and knowledge, just before Kali Yuga started, Lord Krishna gave this scripture, or this scripture known as Bhagavad Puran, at such time arose like sun. And why the analogy with sun? Because it is referring to the dark age of Kali Yuga. In order to give light to the dark age, people of the dark age of Kali Yuga, when people have lost their knowledge, because Kali Yuga means the age of darkness of ignorance. In the Kali Yuga, people don't have good idea about transcendence. They don't have good idea about what actually is their real welfare. At such time, Srimad Bhagavat Puran arose like sun. Puran Arko means sun. Puran Arko Adhu means at such time. Adhuna means at such time. Udita means Uday Hona means arising, like sun is arising. So at such time, sun like Bhagavatam has arose. Now you can see the picture. This picture is also painted in accordance with the description of this particular verse. So you can see here the dark clouds of Kali Yuga are getting dissipated. Why? Because the sun like Srimad Bhagavatam has arisen. And who is the compiler of this Srimad Bhagavatam? The compiler of Srimad Bhagavatam is Vyasadeva. And this Bhagavatam is no different than the Lord. And what is this Bhagavatam is doing? This Bhagavatam is dispelling the darkness of the people of the Kali Yuga, who are engaged in all kind of abominable activities, adharmic activities. In the purport we see, so here in the verse it says Dharma, Jnana Adibhi Saha. So in order to explain this word Dharma, Srila Prabhupada mentions what is real religion. So real religion means to know God, our worship, our relationship with Him, and our duties in relation with Him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. So this is real religion. Religion is not about going to the Lord, worshipping the Lord, and presenting a laundry list before the Lord. Sir, I have offered you 51 rupees prasad. Kindly make my son pass in the 10th exam. Kindly arrange for my promotion. Kindly give me one more son. Kindly arrange for a beautiful wife. Kindly do this. Kindly do this. No, that is not real religion. Real religion is to know God, our relationship with Him, and our duties in relation with Him. Our duties are bhakti. Our relationship is Lord is the master, we are the servant, and God means understanding the various attributes of the Lord. And to know ultimately our destination, our leaving after leaving this material body. So all these ingredients must be there if a religion has to qualify as the true religion. People in Kali Yuga, some glorification of people of Kali Yuga here for your entertainment. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of animals. I really like this description. Royal addition of the animals. And Prabhupada is very hard hitting here. Royal addition of animals. In the Ishopanishad classes that we have been studying so far in Hindi, so there a very similar description is given for the people of Kali Yuga. It is said, Saja Dhaja Pashu, suited booted animals. So in the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of animals. Animals are only interested in eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. And so are the people of Kali Yuga. Only interested in eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. That's it. They have nothing to do with the spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. This is the description of people in Kali Yuga, where they really don't have any interest about spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. That is the misfortune of the people of Kali Yuga. Manda Sumanda Matayo. Manda Sumanda Matayo. You remember this verse we discussed in the earlier chapters. Manda Sumanda Bhagyo, Manda Sumanda Matayo. Manda Bhagya hi upadrata. Manda Bhagya hi upadrata. How to see real light of life? So here description of sun-like Bhagavatam, which destroys the darkness of Kali Yuga. So it is something to do with light. Prabhupada mentions in his purport. If men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, and Lord Krishna is personified. Srimad Bhagavatam is summum bonum of life, and which is Lord Sri Krishna personified. So the 2 points mentioned in this small quotation from Prabhupada is that if you really want to see the real life, real light in your life, you need to make Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam as the goal of your life. Among Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study. It is like BA and Bhagavatam is like MA. It is a Bhagavatam is postgraduate study and Bhagavad Gita is like undergraduate study. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum. Summum bonum means the highest or the ultimate good of life. And again it is being described as Lord Sri Krishna personified. Bhagavatam is Lord Sri Krishna personified. Krishna himself. So coming to the last verse of the class today, 44th verse, which is talking a little bit about parampara. Tatra kirtayato vipra viprarshe bhuri tejasa viprarsher bhuri tejasa aham chadhyagamam tatra nivistasta tadanugraha nivistasta danugrahat soham vah shravayishyami yathadhitam yathamati soham vah shravayishyami yathadhitam yathamati tatra kirtayato vipra viprarsher bhuri tejasah. When at that place, tatra means there, when at that place where this Bhagavatam is being narrated at the banks of the Ganges, where the sages are surrounding, where where Parikshit Maharaj is doing Prayopavishtam, fasting until death. Tatra, at that place, Kirtayato means I narrated, I did the Kirtan, I did the narration of this Bhagavatam. To whom? To great powerful sage Shukdev. When at that place, great powerful sage Shukdev narrated Srimad Bhagavatam, Viprasher Kirtayato by Kirtan is done by great powerful Sheikh Shukdev Goswami. Bhuri Tejasa. Bhuri Tejasa means is a great powerful sage. At that place, when he was narrating it, then Aham Cha Adhya Gamam Tatra. At that place, I did the Adhyagamam. Adhyagamam means I learned it. I absorbed it. And how did I absorb it? Nivishtas tad anugraha. I absorbed it by his anugraha, by his mercy only. And nivishtas. Nivishtas means with rapt attention. I was very attentive while absorbing Srimad Bhagavatam. I was not sleeping. I was not joking. I was not looking here and there. I was spot on hearing Bhagavatam with rapt attention with both my ears. And with that, I could only understand it. I could only learn it because Shukdev Goswami was merciful to me. That is what Sud Goswami is saying. So aham va shravayishyami. And that is how I would also like to speak it to you. Similarly, I would like to speak the same thing, same content, same subject matter to you now also. Yathadhitam yathamati. Very important. Yathadhitam yathamati. Yathadhitam means as I have learned it, as I have studied it, and as I have realized it. Yatha matihi. So when we study something, when we study with rapt attention, with details, we actually realize that subject matter. The subject matter becomes our second nature. We understand it very nicely. Here in Parampara, one has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukdev Goswami and no one else. If one at all wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages, then that is the process and there is no alternative. So Bhagavatam is Lord Sri Krishna himself. But in order to see Lord Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from the proper representative of Shukdev Goswami. Then realize Bhagavatam. Simply hearing Bhagavatam is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. One must realize the text. How we can realize it? We can realize the text when we are serious about it. And how we can show our seriousness about Srimad Bhagavatam? We should read it. We should not only read it, we should not simply not hear it, but we should even go and do a deeper study about Bhagavatam, like we are doing in our courses. We are not only reading Bhagavatam, we are narrating all the verses, we are trying to go deep into the verses, we are understanding the verses, we are writing quizzes on this theme, on these chapters. Not only writing, but we are also discussing these quizzes, these question and answers. And above all, we are also actually trying to learn the poetry aspect, which is the how to recite these verses, how to relish the sweetness of the poetry hidden in these verses. So we are also doing it. So we are kind of doing a very elaborate endeavor to study Bhagavatam in our study classes. And that is the reason, because Srila Prabhupada is encouraging us to do like that. Simple hearing is not at all. One must realize the text with proper attention. We are doing it, or we are making the best effort to do it. And by the blessings of Prabhupada and other Vaishnavas, we will be able to probably able to attain our objective. Then the last point is Sri Krishna, see Krishna in the pages. What this practically means? So Prabhupada is saying, see Lord Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. What does it mean practically? So Bhaktivedanta purports sometimes make a very lofty statement. But Prabhupada is very intelligent enough, very sharp to translate these lofty statements into practical actions. So what Prabhupada says is very nice to see here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. So here in this verse, Sud Goswami says, nivishtas, tad, nivishtas. So nivishtas means rapt attention. So one cannot give rapt attention one who is not pure in mind. And no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. And no one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and meeting. So in order to become pure in our action, we need to have pure eating, we need to have pure sleeping, we need to have right way of fearing. Right way of fearing means we need to, if we have to defend from some enemy, we need to do it in a dharmic way. Mating, we have to do, if we are mating, then we need to do in a dharmic way, like that. And then sleeping, uh, sleep in a dharmic way means sleep on time, wake up on time. And then eating means eating Krishna Prasad. So if we are doing all these actions in a pure way, then our actions are pure. And if our actions are pure, then only with those pure actions our mind will become pure, our consciousness will become pure. And when our consciousness, our mind will become pure, we will have the rapt attention to read Bhagavatam properly. And with that rapt attention, only we can see Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is the uh, concluding message from this chapter by Prabhupada. Now, this is to summarize the whole list of 6 questions. So these are the 6 questions you see in the table, and they are answered in this next column. Ultimate good for humanity, essence of all scripture is devotional service. Krishna's appearance, Purush avatar, Leela avatar, the mention of the verses is given here. And where did the religion took shelter after Lord Krishna disappeared? The answer is Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can see practically in these first 3 chapters, the 3 themes are there. One is bhakti towards the Lord, one is Lord's appearance, avatars, Leela avatar, Purush avatar, and the last theme is Lord's disappearance. When the Lord disappeared, he gave Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam actually is no different than the Lord himself. So that is where we will conclude. So all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we conclude our class for today here. Thank you very much for watching this video with rapt attention. In case you have any questions, you can post them in the chat box below. Uh, I will try to answer them as soon as possible. Thanks a lot.